Every day, lives are lost while playing video games. Virtual lives, though, not real ones. Hello Internet, and welcome to the first episode of Game Sleuth, a series where we analyze the greatest mysteries involving video games. In this episode, I will be investigating the deaths surrounding an arcade game from the 80s called Berzerk, and the curse that many claim caused them. Is this game really the first game in history to result in the death of a player? Stay tuned as we take a look back to the golden age of arcade games and explore the facts surrounding Berzerk as we attempt to solve this mystery. The Berzerk arcade game is a fascinating piece of history. Released in 1980 by Stern Electronics of Chicago, Berzerk is a multi-directional shooter that has players controlling a green humanoid figure as they shoot down robots in a series of simple labyrinths as they attempt to set a high score. The game's designer, Alan McNeil, claims he got the idea after having a dream in which he fought robots in black and white. In fact, the game was originally going to be colorless, but this idea was abandoned when the color game Defender was released earlier the same year to significant success. The name of the game was inspired by Fred Saberhagen's 1967 science fiction series, Berzerkers, in which robots attempt to annihilate all living beings after taking control of their programmers. Berzerk was also one of the first video games to use voice synthesis, an expensive process in 1980. It is estimated that Berzerk's 30-word vocabulary cost $30,000 to produce using a technique known as linear predictive coding, which was relatively new at the time. More intriguing, however, is the game's antagonist, a yellow smiley face named Evil Otto. During gameplay, Evil Otto will occasionally come bouncing in and target you. Otto can travel through walls and speeds up as the game progresses, and unlike most games of the time, he is an enemy that cannot be defeated, as he is fully immune to your laser-like weapon. McNeil designed the character to quicken the pace of the game by forcing players to move on to the next screen after clearing all the robots. Evil Otto was named after Dave Otto, security chief at McNeil's former employer. According to McNeil, Otto would smile while he chewed you out. This leads us to the main topic of the video, an urban legend surrounding the Berzerk arcade cabinet in Friar Tuck's Game Room Arcade, located in Calumet City, Illinois, and the curse of Evil Otto. As with many of the creepypasta stories involving video games that are floating around the web, this story involves the game supposedly killing those who played it. Unlike folk tales passed down for generations that often have some truth to them, most of the scary stories on the web are completely fictional, entirely made up by someone for entertainment purposes. Polybius, the fictional arcade game, is one example that comes to mind. Like those other stories, I was expecting my research into this mystery to lead me to the conclusion that it was, in fact, nothing more than a fictional story dreamed up by someone with a dark imagination. But as it turns out, there actually is some truth to this legend, and the Berzerk arcade cabinet in Friar Tuck's Game Room Arcade is in fact one of the first video games associated with the death of a gamer. According to the urban legend, Evil Otto has the supernatural ability to cause life-threatening physiological conditions in any players that fail to heed his warning. This supernatural phenomenon supposedly resulted in the death of 3 players over the span of several years, all at Friar Tuck's Game Room Arcade. The first victim of this story is 19-year-old Jeff Daly, who, according to the legend, spent hours playing Berzerk on January 12, 1981, and after setting a high score of 16,660, dropped dead of a heart attack. A year later, in April of 1982, 18-year-old Peter Bukowski, who some claim was Jeff Daly's friend, suffered the same fate after setting 2 high scores on the same machine, all while Evil Otto bounced around on the screen, watching them die with a smile on his face. The third death took place just outside the same Friar Tuck's Game Room arcade in 1988. Sources claim that an altercation that took place between 17-year-old Edward Clark Jr. and 16-year-old Pedro Roberts over a quarter that was being used to play the Berzerk arcade game ended with Roberts stabbing Clark in the heart. So, how much truth is there to this tale? It turns out that 18-year-old Peter Bukowski did die of a heart attack while playing Berzerk in Friar Tuck's Game Room on April 3rd, 1982, but not as the result of some supernatural curse. While Peter appeared to be a healthy young man, 5'10", 172 pounds, and no prior medical conditions, Deputy Lake County Coroner Mark Allen discovered during autopsy that his heart was riddled with scar tissue from an undiagnosed congenital condition known as arrhythmogenic right ventricular dysplasia, a rare form of pediatric cardiomyopathy. This condition often goes unnoticed as there are rarely any symptoms, and it has long been attributed to sudden heart failure during strenuous activity. The official cause of death was a heart attack brought on by a myocardial inflammation. Allen claimed that the heart attack could have been caused by any form of exertion, but in this case it appeared to be the result of the excitement brought on by playing the game. As it turns out, Bukowski had also trekked approximately 4 miles on that snowy Saturday night before making it to the arcade. Along the way he had complained to his friend, Burton Everett, that he was feeling thirsty and short of breath, and others in attendance that night could tell Bukowski was not well. Despite this, Bukowski had his mind set on playing Berzerk. As Tom Blankley, community leader and former owner of Friar Tuck's Game Room, recalls, Bukowski was on that game every chance he could get. He loved it. On this night, he played 3 rounds over the course of about 20 minutes, setting 2 high scores in the process. After entering his initials for the final round and stepping away, however, he collapsed. An arcade attendant rushed over and, seeing that he was unresponsive, began CPR. But Bukowski could not be revived. He was rushed to an Indiana hospital where he was pronounced dead upon arrival. It was so awful, just such a tragedy, former owner Tom Blankley remembers. My staff did what they could until the ambulance arrived. The attendant never left him and never stopped trying to revive him, but for some reason he couldn't be brought back. That's something I have never forgotten. After Bukowski passed away, rumors spread about his sudden death while playing Berzerk, prompting some operators, according to Blankley, to pull the game from the floor. It was during this time that the story of Jeff Daly was born, around 6 months after the death of Bukowski. Undoubtedly the result of countless rumors, the story of Jeff and his strange Berzerk death that supposedly happened before Bukowski's incident is simply not true at all. If this wasn't already clear from the circumstances that brought the story to life, there is also the fact that the high score of 16,660 that the story claims took him hours to achieve would take the average player only around 25 minutes to accumulate. It's not considered an impressive score by any means. The number was obviously chosen for its inclusion of 666, the biblical number of the beast representing evil found in the Book of Revelations. There is also no documentation to support this story. In fact, records indicate that a Jeffrey Daly of Virginia, aged 19, did die in 1981, but it was in a car crash on May 29th, not in an arcade in January. Berzerk's designer Alan McNeil has also publicly refuted the reports that 2 players died while playing Berzerk, while acknowledging that 1 player did die. According to a sidebar titled "Kill the Humanoid" on page 53 of issue 47 of Retro Gamer magazine, McNeil states that, quote, "The unfortunate fellow was obese and had run upstairs to play the game. The legend is he set a high score and died, but the owner of the arcade said he didn't finish the game. He was out of breath from the moment he arrived until he dropped." Unquote. While McNeil's recollection of the situation isn't entirely accurate, likely due to all the rumors going around and the fact that he wasn't directly involved with the incident, it further cements the fact that the Jeff Daly story was a hoax. So what of the 1988 murder? Much like the Bukowski incident, that story is more fact than fiction. On March 20th, 1988, Edward Clark Jr., age 17, of Lansing, Illinois, found himself at Friar Tuck's game room in Calumet City, the very same arcade that Bukowski had died at in 1982. When Clark approached the Berzerk machine, the same one Bukowski had played, he saw a couple quarters on the glass and seeing that no one was around, took a quarter, put it in the game and began to play. Soon after, someone came from around a row of games and claimed ownership of the quarter. It was 16-year-old Pedro Roberts, and he demanded that he be compensated for his quarter. Clark refused, and after a few threats were thrown back and forth, a fight broke out. Tom Blankley, former owner of Friar Tuck's, recalls, quote, "I'm not sure what happened between them prior, if there had been some bad blood for a while or what. I remember someone saying Clark had stolen Robert's girlfriend or something. I don't know if that's true, but whatever it was, it got out of hand pretty quickly, and they beat each other up pretty good before we kicked them all out." Unquote. The arcade attendant on hand kicked Roberts out first, and waited 10 minutes or so before allowing Clark to leave as well, telling him to head the opposite way. According to owner Blankley, Clark and his friends went in the same direction as Roberts and his friends, and Roberts, who had been waiting in a nearby alleyway, jumped out, ran across the parking lot, and attacked Clark, stabbing him in the chest with a knife. At first, Clark shrugged off the attack, believing he wasn't seriously injured, and he refused to allow his friends to drive him to a hospital. Moments later, however, he was near collapse and was bundled into the back of a friend's car and driven to a nearby hospital, where he was pronounced dead shortly after from a stab wound to his heart. Pedro Roberts was tried and convicted in May of 1990 after spending 2 years in jail pending trial. He was sentenced to prison for 11 years for the murder of Edward Clark Jr., but he was eligible for parole after serving only 3 years in prison since his stabbing of Clark was ruled self-defense by the court after Roberts made a plea deal. While Berzerk was involved in the death of 2 teenagers, the legend as a whole is of course bogus. Our analysis of the story has revealed that the death of Jeff Daly in the arcade was completely fabricated, and while Peter Bukowski and Edward Clark Jr. did die in situations that involved the game, it was not a result of some curse brought on by evil Otto. And with that, my friends, the case is closed. Or is it? Friar Tuck's game room is no longer in operation, and the location of the Berzerk arcade cabinet that was the center of this legend is currently unknown. As if this story wasn't strange enough, in Calumet City, Illinois, not far from where the arcade used to be, you can see 2 smiley face water towers in the distance. Dubbed Mr. and Mrs. Smiley Face, the 2 well-known landmarks bear a striking resemblance to the arch-nemesis, Evil Otto. Thank you all for watching the first episode of Game Sleuth. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and consider subscribing and ringing the notification bell to stay up to date on all the cases I will be attempting to solve. If there are any other video game mysteries or legends you would like me to investigate, please let me know in the comments below.